ready to start. They've got materials coming, and I think that's it. We've had a lot of help from Rob and IDM Hospitality. They're going to be here again next week working on operational details and those kinds of things. And the people from Stotco Speedling have gone over and over and over this thing to the nth degree, and we're still very excited. It's gonna really be a regional draw, a beautiful project, and can't wait to celebrate the opening. Any questions? I'm happy to try to respond.
Go ahead, Mark. Thanks, Chair. Thanks, Pat, for the update.
Mm-hmm.
You mentioned supply chain, waiting on some product.
Yep.
Have you had to change any of your concepts or your designs or your business model due to that yet? Or is it still trying to stay the course of what you guys plan to do?
We haven't had any one item that we've had to change because it can't get here in time. Cost-wise, we've changed a few things, but not because of the ability to deliver a certain product. That hasn't happened to us yet. Nope. We've been warned about it. We've been asked to hurry up, but no specific item has. We were worried about these aluminum windows, but they're now giving us good news, and they're ready to go. Ready to be here in plenty of time. They should be here in, I think, April, they told us. So.
And a follow-up question, Chair. I've been in it a few times, but I haven't been in it lately. Have you exposed everything so there's no more surprises? Are all the unknowns? Anytime we redevelop or you dig into a wall, there's always a surprise.
We've got it demoed right out to the outside walls. We've got some demo to do on some of the floors, the existing wood floors where there was leakage and they're sagging, and we've got all the structural design done. We've got to open up some of the floors in the basement to hold some of this new structure and to accommodate some of the restaurant fixtures and that kind of thing. So will there be a surprise? Probably. None that we can anticipate at this time. The roof, that was a big surprise for us on the building B. Building B that faces 2nd Street, faces the parking ramp. That roof, we had substantial structural reconfiguring that we weren't expecting, but that work's all done. Was done in phase 1. So that's basically got all new roof structure besides the new roof.
Appreciate the update. Love the flag. Thank you. Are
there any other questions or comments from Mr. Regan? Pat, I would actually like to thank you for your time and your dedication to the community in this project. It's really appropriate, I think, that you're here tonight for me. This project has kind of been almost the alpha and the omega of my experience here
Sure.
at HEDRA and with the Planning Commission, so this is very appropriate. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Any other questions or comments? All right, we'll move on to item B this evening, which is the Block 1 discussion.
Hey, thank you, Mr. Chairman. HEDRA Commissioners here. I'm going to pop this head one forward. We are moving down Main Street here to the other bookend of downtown, which is Block 1. And before us tonight, we have a proposal from Mint Development Rob Bars for the acquisition and development of these 2 parcels, which are about 1.5 acres total, located just north of Art Space, 2nd Street being here, CP Railroad Tracks, Tyler Street. So very well-positioned property and a property that we've had and have been looking for development for quite some time. It's had quite a history there, and we have a proposal tonight to look at here. So Rob is going to provide some information here on his proposal. I won't get into the specifics of it. Looking at our plans for the block in how we strategize for development with all the competing priorities that we have in the city. When we went through our strategic plan earlier this year, we looked at this property and came to a conclusion that we wanted to have a request for proposal to solicit wider interest in development of the parcel. I think I could characterize that when we look at this parcel over time, this has been a high priority parcel, one that we wanted to see as kind of a bookend of the downtown area, and hoping to see what others might come in with and make a decision as to what might best fit that property. So I do bring that forward, that's one of the things we had within our strategic plan. The important things about strategic plans are they need to be strategic to be successful. There's a capacity that we have as a group in order to do things successfully. And if things are going beyond that, in which we have items that may provide too much as far as management capacity, the possibilities of things going awry can come up on that one. But so we want to be able to make sure that we're able to handle what we have coming in here. Taking a look at the site itself, it's an interesting site from the standpoint of the shipping containers. I like the shipping container concept. You're looking at the railroad tracks and the kind of boxcar theme look to that. The other thing we've always looked at on that property has been having something that can be a destination. It's a little bit difficult from the standpoint of you can barely see 61 off the map here. This is on the other side of downtown. It's behind art space now, so the visibility of this property may be a challenge. And that's what we've seen over time. But we look at the opportunities of development within the city right now. We're in a tract right now in which we're going to see more substantial change to the downtown area than I can imagine, certainly in my tenure, 20 years, and probably further beyond that. When you take a look at the projects that are going on, we just heard about the Confluence that's going to be opening up in the next year. We also have 2 other apartment complexes going through entitlements and hopefully under construction this year. Bottom line is we're going to be adding about 140 new apartment units within the downtown area. When you bear in mind of what we have existing, we have about that existing within the downtown. We're going to double the amount of apartments we have. That's a great thing. It's going to bring great vitality to the downtown area. Question comes up as to this parcel. How does the capacity of this parcel for something significant change with all those new members, all those new apartment dwellers within the downtown? It's a question that I have. I don't have a real good answer to it, but that's something that may change over time here. Environmental cleanup on the site. I think as HEDRA may recall, back in 2018, when we were going through the Panache project, we were successful in acquiring a grant from Metropolitan Council for $270,000 for environmental cleanup, which is great. I held on to it as long as I could, but unfortunately, because the project did not go forward, that grant no longer exists. I did get good word from Met Council representatives that if a project were to come back in the future, that we would be a good candidate to receive those funds again. Now, the 2018 dollars that went into that were about $320,000 was the estimate for cleanup on that site. We had a grant for $270,000. And so I'm not sure, with everything else going on in the world, I imagine that the costs of cleanup would increase on that. We'd have to get an estimate on it. We'd also need to be able to find some additional funds and looking at grant funds to do that. The grant rounds that come available, the next one would be on May 1st of this year. So there is that unknown on the project as far as what the environmental cleanup portion of it. So $270,000 with the grant. So we had about $50,000 that we would be having to pay out of our pocket as part of that proposal back in 2018 here. The other thing is looking at the offer price itself that Rob is bringing forward. It's an offer of about $94,500 for submittal of the property, which is about 1.49 acres. As Rob points out, there's certainly encumbrances on the property. It's the riverfront has its benefits, it has its detriments. There's floodplain on the site, there's high-wire power lines on the site. That does reduce the viability and the buildability of that site. But when you take a look at the assessed valuation of that site, Dakota County has that at about $474,000. So there's a substantial difference there between the $1.46 a square foot with the offer that Rob is bringing forward and the assessed valuation of $730 a square foot. I don't know where that would sit in the real marketplace right now, but just bring that forward as an observation that there is a difference between those two. So that's kind of my initial thoughts on the project itself. Rob is gonna tell us a little bit more specifically on the project and how his vision of the property would be. As we look at tonight, Rob is bringing forward a proposal for consideration on a letter of intent. So there's a couple of options that HEDRA may have. One is to proceed as you had planned during the strategic plan, and that is to solicit development proposals in that 1-year time frame, which would be starting later on this year in 2022. Rob's proposal certainly could be one of those under consideration, but it would open it up to a wider body. The other would be to consider the sale of the site, as requested by Mint Development here. If we're going down that road, my suggestion would to have our city attorney look at that a little more closely and not act on the letter of intent, but look at something that would be more in line with a purchase and development agreement that we've done on other properties. So bring those observations forward for your consideration. And at this time, we'll call Rob up, and he can tell us a little bit more about the site. So let me see if I can manipulate things around here. And there, all set.
Perfect. Thanks, John. Evening, Board. Thanks for the opportunity to be here this evening to present our proposal for development of this parcel, the Lot 1 site. So maybe just to start, since it's on the cover slide here, this is a kind of a snapshot of a rendering of the master site plan for the proposed site, and I'll dig into it a little bit further here as we walk through. But the primary structure is at the south end of the site that you can see with the cursor. And I'll talk a little bit more about placement and some of the challenges that John mentioned about this parcel itself. But maybe before that, just a little bit about myself. So I started Mint Development Company in 2019. I've been in the industry for 15 years now. Have a proven track record as both a developer, also assisting others as a project manager and owner's rep, similar to how I'm assisting the Confluence team. Since we moved to town in 2015, we've been focused on creating valuable developments here in the backyard. That's one of the things that we like to do. We like to make an impact in the community we live in and seek out opportunities of where we can make a difference. So as far as local track record, the Aspen Dental project here, this was a site that I built actually for my former employer. It was a development project that I did. It was actually land that we bought from this city in 2017, I believe. It was a unique site. Kind of off the radar, off the grid. Most people kind of flew over it, thought it was a right-of-way site that we found. Had some unique nuances with that as well, where we had to extend quite a few utilities to the site to serve it. It now provides just shy of $27,000 in annual property taxes, and we have around 10 to 15 FTEs that work for Aspen Dental. We're currently in final stages of our planned senior housing project over on Highway 46 and 47, over near Seaworth's apartment buildings, if you're familiar with the area. So we've been working on that for almost 2 years now. I'm a junior partner with the development team. I handled the land development and entitlement work on the site. So we went through comp plan amendments, rezoned the site, obtained plating and site plan approvals. Right now we're slotted for spring construction. Similar to other projects, we've been delayed a little bit just because of construction pricing in the marketplace, but we're still pushing forward, and we're projecting that we'll have annual tax property implications of about $125,000 annually. We'll create 30 FTEs and about 156 indirect jobs through the construction process. Just another noteworthy project, unique opportunity that I had for another developer. So again, I help other developers that work in similar facets that I do. So when COVID set in, I was engaged by Bethesda Lutheran Communities, so they're a nonprofit developer based in Wisconsin. I had actually pitched them on the site in Hastings to partner with me on that, to do one of their projects here in town. They had passed on it, but during the travel restrictions that they were under with Wisconsin, they hired me to go out and find them other sites for the developments. So I was able to assist them. We locked down a site in 90 days. It's going to be a light-tech project, transit-oriented development right on a future BRT line. So for us at Mint Development, when we started the company, one of our primary focus was shifting people's thinking about what the rental norms are. We're 100% committed to elevating that experience from a guest and resident experience. I really like to gravitate towards unique projects. That's why I love helping these guys with the Confluence. It's not like anything else that I've had an opportunity to work on. And so we love gravitating towards, we talk about intertwining spaces that you never want to leave with natural landscapes that call your name. I mean, this site meets all of those buckets. Right on the river, sits across from the natural landscapes, right in the downtown core, has some inherent challenges from a redevelopment standpoint and some of the restrictions. So, this is an intriguing site that we'd love to work on. So, restrictions. I mean, just to paint a visual of really what's at this site, because it's easy to talk about, the opportunity of being on the riverfront. Very appealing. But there's a reason that it's been a challenging site for everyone else that's come to the table. So if you look at the parcels itself, there's two parcels. The northern parcel here is almost 60% encumbered by floodplain. So your developable area is this little wedge here. You've got floodplain coming from the north. You've got easement and utility restrictions from the east, the path that cuts through. And then between the two parcels, you have a 50-foot bifurcation due to the overhead power lines that split up the parcels. So really, when you look at the site, there's very limited opportunity of what you can do here. You don't really have the entire site to work with unless you can get creative because of these restrictions. Those power lines are no cheap ticket to move. We've had discussions with the provider. They're about $750,000 a pop per one that you have to move. You have to move a minimum of 2, likely 3, to free up the site and get them out of the way. They're not something you can bury. So again, it's a financial implication, very restrictive on the site. John talked about the contaminated soils and cleanup that's required there. The other thing I'm sure you've heard about in this area, we've encountered it on Confluence, Art Space has run into it. Seaward's plan takes it into account as there's shallow bedrock. So having something like underground parking is very difficult to do. Again, from a financial aspect, to get rid of the bedrock, to get underground parking, it's very difficult to make happen. And that's why most of them are having at-grade parking and then stacking above. There's additional unknowns that we don't know yet. The city has a small building on the site that's used for storage. The railroad company parks on the site, so we don't know if there's underlying parking easements that exist there that we'd have to deal with and either have vacated. Again, those are just a number of the items that anyone that comes to the site has to deal with. So this is a look at the site plan that we've created. Again, we've taken some liberties in developing this. We were here 17 months ago competing for the site. We had looked at a similar layout, but last few months we've dug in a lot deeper. Right now there's not an Alta survey available. That's been something that's been discussed both with Spades and when we presented. It's a key factor for anyone to really know what you can do with the site. Again, from where's the floodplain really at? How do you deal with the easements? What other issues are there on the site that we don't know yet? But we've spent a lot of time with our civil engineers doing conceptual layouts, guessing as best we can on what's there. So what you see on the site plan to the right side of the screen, again, this is the primary structure, which is a 4-story building. And then we've looked at how can we activate that unique little wedge up on the front of the riverfront. It's right there. It's a great site, has great visibility to the bridge, right on the trail. And so one thing that we've been intrigued on, and we've talked to John for a couple years about our interest in incorporating shipping containers. So we've got a layout of 4 different containers that are up in that wedge that I'll show you a little closer as we move through it. So here's a look at the main structure in the proposed project. It's, again, parking at grade on the main floor, 3 levels of housing on top of it. We've added some unique accents with shipping containers, both on the end caps of the building. We've also stacked some in the front of the building that faces the river. When I went through, some of the comments about Seaward's project, I know there's a desire of, okay, we lose this ground floor activation. You have parking there, you can make it look aesthetically appealing, but it really doesn't activate that ground floor. And so one of the things that the containers allow us to do is to push the footprint outside of the parking area, create a ground floor activation for the common elements and spaces for the residents. And then we've incorporated a couple other unique elements that we'll talk about here as well. So again, this is just another angle that you can see. So it's 4 stories. There's about 9 units per floor right now estimated, so we have 27 units. The development it says live here, so one of the things that we focus on was trying to encompass this live, work, play concept. So again, 27 units. The work component, and so this is probably one of the things that we're most excited about, is with adding these containers to the front facade and creating this ground floor activation, we're trying to create a space for aspiring entrepreneurs. So it gives you a live-work aspect. So each of these doors here are actually into a studio space. So you could have a resident that has a startup concept that lives above the unit, but they have a container that has a small studio space that they can have ground floor entrance into. And then the containers that we have tipped vertically are actually an interior stairwell that goes directly into the unit above. So there's 4 of those planned in the concept. The white box to the far right of the screen is the primary entrance for the overall complex for everyone else that doesn't have one of these units. We love talking about community spaces and communal vibes we talk about. So this is sitting above the entrance, large outdoor space, clearly, a great view of the river that all the residents would be able to utilize. There's similar spaces like this for 2 of the 4 live work units. So they have similar large outdoor spaces like this. So they'd be, the primary higher end units. And then the end caps have deck spaces as well. So here's a look at the main floor parking area. Again, just to paint a picture, you've got access from Tyler Street, 34 spaces for parking underneath, and then you can see these bump outs for what are labeled the workshops, and then that spiral stair component that brings you up to the private residence. Here's a look at the main floor of units. Again, you have the large terrace for common space for everyone, the 4 spiral staircases that get you into the 4 units that face the river. Right now, we've got 9 units shown. We've done other schemes where we adjust some square footages, add more units. We haven't really dove deep into the units count and size. But it allowed us to do some of the massing and some of the renderings that we've created. So the play aspect. So when I came last time, we were primarily looking at just a residential building. We had a hard time really envisioning the activation of the site from a commercial aspect. Just like John said, it's kind of off the beaten path. It's not off of 61. It's at the end of the line. But again, the great things that John mentioned is everything that's going on downtown. So the confluence project's around the corner. This creates the opposite end of the bookend. There's the 85 units that are going on the other HEDRA site. Seaward's got 30 units on there. So all those new residential units help make something like this come alive. We're also true believers that a container project is a draw on its own. If you ever do any research, people love the concept of containers. There's a lot of different groups out there. There's a new one in Minnesota called Latitude. They started a year ago. They're exploding. They're doing backyard containers for people, for your added work unit, for your poolside container. They're doing great things out there, and people just gravitate to this concept, and we really don't have a lot of it going on in the state yet. So this concept looks at 4 different containers being used. It's modeled after a project in San Diego. So there's an economic development site that was dead in San Diego that they could not activate with a developer. They hired Rad Labs Architecture, and they're primarily focused on container design. They worked with a local brewery to stack 3 containers similar to how we have shown here. One's your bar pickup, one's your seating, and then one's used for the cooler and your restrooms. Okay, so we've elevated that a little bit here where we have 4 40-foot containers shown. Again, the black container here is your pickup container, so this is your bar food pickup window. Behind that is a second container for your kitchen aspect and coolers. In the mint container here is your dining container. We also added seating on the top floor of it. Behind that is the 4th container. Half of it's for restrooms, and the other half is for storage. And so what we're modeling is a concept that's a seasonal project here for the F&B delivery. Again, due to its nature and outside dining and our weather that we deal with, it's really a seasonal play. But we're underwriting it into the entire project. It would happen at the same time. I know in the staff report, one of the things they talked about is not having a tenant in play. And so a couple comments, I would just give you food for thought on that. In a typical mixed-use project, take Art Space, for example, there's not a tenant in play when they built that. And that's very common for a mixed-use project because they're not the driver of the pro forma. They're a little continuity piece that activates the ground floor, but the pro forma is driven by your housing units, okay? So the difference between what we're proposing is they're separate buildings, okay? But they're something we can manage from a cost side with construction of the other building. The other challenge that you have is to market to a tenant when you don't have site control. You don't get very far in conversations. Everyone goes, well, what's our rent gonna be? Do you control the site? Nope, okay, come back in a year when you do. So conceptually, we can say we have tenants that we know will fit here, but until there's a level of control, it's hard to get very far in those kind of conversations. We have a lot of ideas of who we could drop into this place. Most of the work I do is from a retail development side, so we have a lot of relationships with the retail brokers, the food and beverage brokers that operate in the Twin Cities. So this is a look sitting at the containers, looking back at the bridge. And so one thing that we'd like to do and that I love that the Confluence did is that public space realm, an extension from Levy Park, carving out some of the area that's encumbered by the 100-year floodplain, and trying to really extend the park area onto the site. Again, bring more people to it, to get onto the site, enjoy the space. So that's something that we'd like to explore with the city if you're interested in our proposed project. So from a project alignment standpoint, it aligns with the 2040 comp plan. It's a mixed-use project. That's what it's guided towards in the 2040 comp plan. Designated as downtown core. We fit in all the buckets that calls out for spaces. Past strategic plan in 2020 called it the key need for housing. Granted, there are other projects going on in close proximity. Honestly, very little competition from our eyes from the aspect of having the river views and the additional things that those projects cannot offer. We're going to be falling into a different bucket. Also, I would say that we feel that the market has been really underserved, and the ripple effect has taken this long. And so the projects that are happening now are because the market's ready for it finally. There's a reason that projects were not happening for the years that they weren't. And another 30 units is not going to be detrimental to fill. Couple more visuals here to talk about land valuation. So, yes, is our number disconnected from the tax valuation? Absolutely. Comments to that is, again, you know, if you break apart the parcel, this is showing 0.26 acres available on the north parcel, 0.5 buildable on the south parcel. Those don't even account for the additional easements and utility easements on the east side of the site. So it drives it even further down. We're estimating that there's about 0.6 acres available. Okay, so if you look at the tax assessed values of the parcels, the northern parcel's 204. I mean, hard to justify that. There's 0.2 acres of developable land there. You can't even put a building and parking on it on a standalone site. You know, so that it's hard to look at that from a valuation standpoint. The southern parcel, again, there's probably 0.4 usable acres there, which is, that one's valued at 269. You look at the recent transactions that the board has done here with other groups. The Stencil Group paid 48% of their tax assessed value. That doesn't account for the contemplated TIF district that's looking at there. And I would argue that, you know, that deal, although there's a higher financial upfront cost that they're paying, the value they're going to get for the TIF district will far outweigh the dollar land that anyone else is getting. Way better deal looking at that. So if you break that down from a square foot standpoint, again, John mentioned $1.46 per square foot. If you adjust it for the true available land that's bifurcated with the power lines, we're about $362. Again, Stencil Group on their recent transaction was $473. So again, yes, is it lower? Absolutely. Things to think about from a development perspective is they're able to fit 85 units on that site. We'll be hard pressed to get above 30 to 35. We have a plan that shows potentially 41. We won't be able to meet parking counts. For us to activate the site with the container development, we're doubling the site development costs. You have to bring water and sanitary to both locations. That doesn't happen on the other projects. So we have twice as many site improvement costs, a third of the units to distribute them across. So again, you know, when we're looking at the numbers and the pro forma, those are the things that we're thinking about when we're looking at the site. The LOI that we provided, what we asked for from HEDRA, probably the first and foremost and the most important thing for this site, and I'll tell you, even if you don't have interest in our proposal, it doesn't trip the trigger, I would put this at the top of the list for a priority for this site, because if you're going to want to do an RFP, you can't do it without an ALTA, because we're still guessing. I mean, we're making educated guesses on what we can do on the site, but without that ALTA, you really still don't know what can be done. So that's one thing that we asked for HEDRA to provide us if there's interest in the offer. Also to assist us with any regulations that might be inherent on the property, parking, buildable height is another one that we're aware of. Any information regarding floodplain that we may not know of. The performance of the cleanup for the contaminated properties that John spoke of. Also, there's a TIF district option that's out there that's not a redevelopment TIF. It's slightly different for its qualifications, but it's a soil condition TIF. So if there is a gap in a grant that's available, that might be another tool or mechanism that can assist with that as well. In summary, the benefits that we think the development offers is strategy alignment. You know, we've got a proven track record not only developing in the community, but also buying land from the city that has been developed. We've got a high likelihood of success compared to past developments. You know, this is quite a bit more straightforward than other things that have been contemplated. You know, it's a housing development. It's not overly complicated. We have the ability to push the project forward in the near future. Job creation, you know, we'd estimate 150 temporary jobs through the construction life cycle, and then about 10 or 12 from a permanent standpoint, with the economic impact of about $70,000 projected for the property tax. Again, so requested action, we'd love for the board to authorize staff to move forward with a negotiation with us on the development. We've spent a lot of time thinking about this site. This is the second or third time that we've come forward proposing on it. And we'd love to make something happen here on the riverfront. Thanks for the time.
Thank you, Rob. All right, does anyone have any questions for Mr. Bars? Yes.
To Rob, the power lines, is that in between the two properties then?
Correct. So basically sits under the parking area.
Right over the top of the parking area?
Yep.
Okay.
And that's why we stage it that way. I mean, ideally, we'd love to push the primary building up to the riverfront, you know, taking into account the 100-year floodplain, but you just can't do it.
And that's consistent with our parking lots already that are existing, the power lines go right through them as well.
Right.
Any additional questions? Mr. Vaughn?
To follow up, thank you. To follow up on that, John, didn't we bury the lines behind, over by the bridge? In that, in the alleyway on First Street?
Lower, I mean, some of the, not the highline power lines that are through the riverfront here. We explored the pricing of that back when the bridge construction project was going on and found out what Rob has found out as well, is it's prohibitively expensive.
I have another question about height. I think we just approved something about height limits from, was it 4th Street this way? And is this gonna, 4 stories is higher than that, or was it a, I couldn't remember what we approved, but.
Sure. Mr. Vaughn, the limit that we have in this area would still be in place, which is 47 feet. Looking at what being proposed here by Rob, I think that should be fine with the 4-story concept here. What we did with the amendment was looking off of 2nd Street into the neighborhood where the stencil development was, where we went a little bit higher. Rationale for that was it was disconnected with the main downtown area.
And one question for Rob. I like the shipping container concept, but is that considered a facility, a building then, or is that temporary structure?
No, they require footings, ADA compliance, utilities to them. We looked at doing something similar at Confluence with a single container.
Right.
So no, they're treated just like every other building.
Okay, so it's a building permit, everything has to be done. Okay, thank you.
All right, any additional questions or comments from
Private square footage.
commissioners? All right, thanks, Rob. All right, what do we need to do next?
Commissioners, what you have before you tonight is a request from Mr. Mars to take action on his project. He presented was a letter of intent on the project. From my standpoint, I'm looking for direction one of 2 different ways here. With the strategic plan, our plan was to go out for a request for proposal later on this year. Is that something that the board would like to proceed with, that direction? If you're looking at this development and looking to take some potential action on it, my ask on that would be is we would put together a purchase and development agreement and go through some of the terms. And if there's any questions on any of the terms that were in the letter of intent, we would focus on those. So really looking for some direction from the board tonight pertaining to should we work on an agreement with this project, or should we continue as planned with the strategic plan and issue an RFP, solicit a wide variety of projects, which may include this one as well, and go in that direction. So really looking for direction from the board tonight on that.
Commissioners, any discussion? Just had a question in regards to the environmental cleanup. We do need to have a signed agreement with someone that they're going to be purchasing it to get the grant to clean the property up.
Commissioner, yes, that's going to be an important aspect to it, is to have some semblance of a development agreement. And It may even be more important now because we already had an agreement before, so the regulatory agency that would be granting it may be looking even stronger at that one. But yeah, we would need something in order to be eligible.
So to do your RFP, how long are you thinking that would take if you were to do that?
If we were to start that, the summer on that,
So we're looking at out another year really to get the environmental cleanup?
yeah, I mean, it would be something in which you would have something underway in the end of '22 for construction in '23 is what I would see.
Yes, Commissioner.
John, Eric, the city owns this parcel. Does it also own the parcel to the west? Or is it just this one that we've got left?
Commissioner, part of it. Most of the property to the west is owned by a private developer, Bob Abdo. About 1/4 of that site is retained by HEDRA. So our thought has been that would be developed in conjunction with the remaining site there. No, nothing formally adopted that ties those together, but that's kind of the long-term plan.
Thanks, John. Any additional, yes, Commissioner.
John, do you agree that a Alta survey is needed for the property for additional information?
Commissioner, absolutely. Mr. Barnes is correct on that one. This is quite a unique site, and an Alta survey would provide not only the boundaries, the physical boundaries of the site from a survey standpoint, but also any restrictions, any easements or other things that would encumber development of the site. So it gives you a true picture of what the window would be.
And just as a follow-up to that, I recall during the art-based development there being some discussions about some of the things around environmental conditions and parking. Is there information that we got during that process that we could use in this situation to help make projections? Have we passed that information along? Or is there additional information from the arts-based developers we can get so that we can provide the best picture of what's going on here? I remember a lot of those conversations, and I don't want there to be any surprises.
No, absolutely. Yeah, and with that too, when the art space development came along, we had cleaned the property up to the obligations of past regulations. So we thought it was a clean site. Regulations had changed, found out that more cleanup was necessary on it. What we did with this site when we were working with the Panache development is we did our environmental investigation specifically for this site. We used the same environmental firm that did the art space. So we have the phase 1, phase 2 response action plan. And in layman's terms, what that means is we know it's there. We know it needs to be cleaned up. We've had the MPCA sign off on what that would be. The big question that comes up now would be, hopefully nothing significant has changed in the last 3 years for regulations, and what would the price be on that?
Any additional, yes, Commissioner Lyon. I think John's looking for direction, and I can. John, have we had a lot of phone calls on this piece of property since we've been marketing it or saying that we own it? We used to have a broker trying to market it,
We did.
and we took that away and kind of did. Do we get a lot of calls?
No, we don't. I mean, it's a hidden parcel. It's not something that we're actively marketing right now. It's something in my plan was to do that more during an RFP process to get it out there. So no, it's not something we were. When we had the marketing firm, I think it was CBRE that was marketing this property for, I think, 2 years, we really didn't get much as far as hits on that one. Granted, the market was different at that point too. I mean, it was a much different market, but.
My 2 cents on the property is, we struggled. The last 2 that we tied it up with were ideas. They were never there. And it seems like it was good. We liked the ideas because it created jobs. And I thought, oh, those are 2 good ones that we should really. I get a little nervous about saturation of apartments, but I'm not a developer. I'm not the one that has to market and try to fill up their places. I'm actually okay with going down the road of this because this developer was here last time. You know, we chose the other one. But I tell you, my selling point is the commercial side of it. Having that restaurant concept up on the river, that changes my tune a lot. I appreciate the design with the in the housing side of it, but I really like the front half, and if that wasn't there, I'd probably have a different discussion about it, but I would like to see, I don't know if we're ready to sign a purchase and development. I think our attorney needs to, like John had asked, review this a little bit more, but I'm leaning towards, we have somebody that is proven to do some projects in town. Sounds like they want to move it fairly fast, and I think we can put that in the agreements. As long as that front half is tied to it, I'm in favor of moving forward with this developer. Thank you.
Any other questions or comments?
Yes, Eric.
One thing I'll add to is the economic development coordinator for the city. We have gotten some interest on the site. It was in relation to the wastewater treatment plant site. When that becomes available, somebody considered a dual project on both sides. So we have gotten some kicking of the tires, so to speak, on that site from other interested parties. The other thing that I'd like for some feedback from HEDRA is that this is what's before you today, as was mentioned, housing development with a seasonal commercial component. And so when looking for feedback from HEDRA with respect to that seasonality nature, I really like the idea, I like the concept. The seasonality is something that concerns me from a long-term activation and year-round use of the site. We have year-round restaurants currently that are struggling to staff themselves. I'm concerned that, as was mentioned, this is a restricted site from a buildability standpoint. It very well could occur that an apartment building is built and the containers are never filled. And then we're left with a piece of property that is not buildable because there's not enough left to support it, as was mentioned, from a pro forma standpoint. And so something to keep in mind on that seasonality. If that could be turned into a year-round, personally, I'd be a lot more excited.
Yes, Commissioner.
I do believe, though, that being on the river and the bike path and so forth, the seasonality piece of that is very nice and attractive and appealing. When you look at the winter, I don't know how many people are walking up and down the river during the winter. I think they're in downtown area, but I don't know about that portion of it. So to me, I think it's a good use of the property to have that seasonality piece. Maybe they can do something year-round with it, with like skiing or some, that kind of thing to utilize that. But, I like that use of it, I guess, is what I'm thinking. So we'll see. One other point, though, just, if we decide to move down this, could we start that Alta survey sooner versus later?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
We would start on that immediately.
Okay, sounds good.
Yes, Commissioner.
Well, I've been thinking about this, but I'm going to say it. I just have a big sigh that we got a big old parking lot again on our river. And I keep coming back to that. We turned our backs on it 200 years ago, and, we're kind of at that decision point again where, whatever, this is one of the last parcels that's part of the downtown that's going to be on the river. And I get the economic implications and all those other things. To me, it's a long-term, whatever we put there is going to be there for a long term. And again, we've got a parking lot on our riverfront, and we've got a lot of parking lots on our riverfront, and that's the part that I really struggle with. I understand that, economically, it's hard to get restaurants, that can make a go of it, and I appreciate that. And so I do recognize that there is some, encumbrances to what we can do with this parcel, but, we're putting up an apartment building that some people are going to really enjoy, and hopefully we'll be able to have some commercial component to it, and we've got a parking lot. And that's, and that might be the way it is. But I just got to express that that's kind of, I think, how pretty much the community would feel.
One question that I have is Mr. Bars had laid out a few elements that he had potentially needed more information on. Is there a time frame where it looks like potential action one from us would be to work on some development issues, getting some questions answered? Is there a period of time where we are able to do that to get this more into an alignment where a lot of these questions are answered for Rob, or these lingering issues.
Mr. Chairman, there's a couple of questions that I would have, I think, for discussion of the board. If we were going down the road for a purchase and development agreement, the price of the property itself, we have the offer that Rob has brought forward to us. Is that something that you would accept? Is this something that you would like further investigation to determine if a different price should be set on that property? That would be one issue. The other, I think, as Eric had pointed out, having a comfort level with with what's being proposed with the commercial development there. Being seasonal in nature, is that something that's going to have the permanency that you'd be looking for and the impact that you'd be looking for in that development itself? The other things related to the soil TIF district would be something we would need to ferret out on that one. I know a little bit about that, but enough to be dangerous. So we'd have to take a look at what that would be. I think as Rob had pointed out, it would be something that could be a potential gap filler in that one, but there's that issue. And there's one more thing now that I am forgetting, so I'll leave it at that.
Commissioner Vaughn.
I think to kind of wrap it up, the reason I support it is, I think we should be checking that price, and that's what I meant, check with our attorney. Let's check that price, but I don't want to delay that. That's something we should do within the next month or so to help the developer. But the commercial side, that's the reason why I asked, are these temporary units? And it's, if we're pulling a building permit, it can become a full year-round place. It just currently what they have there structurally is seasonal concept. But it could be a full-time place someday that could be year-round. It doesn't have to be seasonal. It's just being proposed as seasonal. It may start that way and then realize, hey, we got to keep this thing going, and then they make more of an investment to make it a year-round. So that's my recommendation, that we move forward and come back in a month and find out, is that price somewhat close? Helps me make a decision if we should move forward with the development on this one.
All right,
So
thank
just a clarification there, Commissioner Vaughn. Are you looking, your expectations for the January meeting would be to have the price, a better idea of the price of the property? You're looking at an agreement at that point?
If the price is, I would just like to get our input of what the price should be.
Okay.
Because I think we're getting a developer's offer where I don't want to look at we did the county's price on the Seaward property. What is our price? Let's, if we got to hire somebody to say this is what the value probably is at, and it might take more than a month. Sorry, it might take 2 months, but at least we got to get that number to help me understand if the developer's price is somewhat closer where we can start to move forward. Because if it's within that, then I want to say, let's move forward. Let's go into that next level. But if the price comes back as, no, that thing's worth $450,000, that's going to make me pause a little bit, like, I get it. Then we're going to start working down all the issues that a developer has to worry about inside that property. So it's all about getting our value of that property, not just the county's assessment value.
Understood. Thank you.
Yes, Commissioner.
I think you need that Alta survey to be able to determine that too. So you might as well order that. I'll recommend that we order that right away so that we can determine a price of it, so.
Sure. Commissioners, Alta survey is in progress right now. We've got the survey part done. We're finishing up the title work on it.
All right, does anyone have any additional questions or comments regarding this? All right, we are looking for an action this evening.
I'll make a motion that we have staff move forward get our price, can finish the Alta survey, but get a price value that we have. And then next time we meet, that we make a determination if we move forward with the agreement with this developer.
Thank you, Commissioner. All right, we have a motion on the floor.
I'll second.
We have a second. All right, Commissioners, all those in favor of Commissioner Vaughn's proposal, please signify by saying aye. Aye. All those opposed? All right, motion carries. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you. Thanks, Rob.
All right, on to item C this evening. Adopt a resolution 2021-22 authorizing staff to process HEDRA loan refinancing. John or Eric?
I was gonna grab the stick out of there for him. Oh, thank you, already got it. But yeah, okay, good. You know how to work this, so.
Thank you, Mr. President. Before you this evening, before the HEDRA Board, is Resolution 2021-22, which would authorize staff to essentially refinance terms of 10 loans that HEDRA currently has in its existing revolving loan portfolio. Each of those 10 loans is listed here on the screen in front of you, and a more detailed description was included in your packets including the current outstanding balances, their current monthly payments, proposed revised payments, maturity dates currently, and then what the proposed maturity dates would be. We're looking to, really the crux of this is to revise what is currently variable interest loans adjusted to prime plus 0.25% every 2 years based on whatever the origination date of the loan was. Creates a bit of an administrative headache. Additionally, looking to adjust some of the loan maturity dates based on the 20 months where the revolving loans, payments, and interest were deferred in response to and relief related to the COVID-19 pandemic. Would cause some ballooning in payments and some really high monthly costs if we held those loan maturity dates as is, so pushing some of them out to recognize that deferment time. So with that, I'll stand for questions.
All right, any questions for Eric? Yes, Commissioner.
And when we originally laid this out, it looked like the majority of them had lower payments, and it seems like now the majority of them, the payments went up. Was that part of that deferment period that come in and the adjustments of what we're doing?
Yeah, Commissioner Goblish, yes, there's slight increases in all of them, but moderate compared to what would result if we didn't have some of those extensions for that 20 months, and also potential rising costs for the ones that did get into additional potential years. If we do see inflation, we see rising in that prime rate, what could ultimately result in higher payments. So what staff is proposing is what we've tried to do to keep fair in terms of keeping payments roughly what they had been previously. Recognize there'd be a slight increase, but it also provides a bit of predictability, not a bit, a lot of predictability for both HEDRA in terms of payments, as well as the people that are making the payments on what they can expect to be paying month over month throughout the life of the loan. Prime is currently 3.25%. We're putting it at 4%, so we're slightly above. As was mentioned to HEDRA, we could be taking a slight haircut on future interest if that prime rate does go up, but we're starting a little bit above that as is, and so that's where and why staff landed there.
I'm fine with it, how you're doing it, so.
Thank you. All right, does anyone have any questions or comments regarding this? All right, if not, I will entertain a motion.
I'll move to approve.
All right, do we have a second? All right, thank you, Commissioner. All right, everyone, all those in favor, I'll have to go back a few pages here. Yes, all those in favor of adopting Resolution 2021 authorizing staff to process the HEDRA loan refinancing, please signify by saying aye. Aye. All those opposed? All right, the motion carries. Thank you, everyone. Okay, let's see. All right, item D, adopt resolution 2021-23, authorizing the write-off of revolving loans made to Joseph Ryan in the amount of $60,540. Eric?
Thank you, Mr. President. These loans were made to help finance improvements at 106 and 108 2nd Street East. That would be the building on it'd be the south side of 2nd Street, furthest west on the corner there. Previous business, not the current business that currently is there. All of the work that was financed was completed. So while the loan itself was not repaid, there is some intrinsic value retained by the community in the fact that those two buildings were improved. Mr. Ryan filed for bankruptcy in 2016. HEDRA held a second position on the real estate and assets, backing that loan. Vermillion State Bank with the first position, followed disposition of all of the real estate and assets. There were not funds available for any HEDRA recoup of the loan in total or in portion. This is something, again, that occurred in 2016. We're looking to clean up the books here on this one. In order to do so, it'd be appropriate for HEDRA to formally authorize staff to write off this loan as a loss on the books, and in total at $60,540.
All right, thank you, Eric. Does anyone have any questions? Martha?
No questions.
All right, thank you.
Just seeing that it's uncollectible, I don't know that we have any other options.
Right.
I would just encourage you to, in future, that we bring this before HEDRA or sooner versus later. I think that's just appropriate. From a banking standpoint, we get in trouble if we don't, so.
All right, once again, the benefits of backgrounds here comes to our favor. Thank you. All right, if there are no further questions for Eric, I'll entertain a motion.
So moved.
Yes, do we have a second? Second. All right, thank you, everyone. All those in favor of approving this resolution, please signify by saying aye. Aye. All those opposed? And the books are closed on that one. All right, on to item E this evening. We have Adopt Resolution 2021-24, requesting a public hearing on the proposed establishment of tax increment financing, District Number 9.
Thank you, Mr. President. The developer for the UBC property has formally submitted a TIF application to the city. That application is being reviewed by the city's financial consultant, Northland Securities. They've provided a schedule essentially for the review of that application. Tonight's requested action is the first step in that schedule. Simply request that HEDRA request that the City Council call for and have a public hearing at its meeting on February 22nd. One adjustment to the resolution in your packet, it listed February 21st. That is President's Day. City Council will not be meeting that evening, so we did adjust that and provided that at the dais here for you this evening. Action this evening does not approve or provide any specific action related to any potential TIF financing, merely sets in motion the statutory requirements for a public hearing to consider the TIF. With that, I'll stand for questions.
All right, thank you, Eric. Are there any questions on this topic? We all like motion. All right, we will entertain a motion at this point then. So moved. Do we have a second? We have a second. All those in favor of approving Resolution 2021-24, please signify by saying aye. Aye. All those opposed? Thank you, everyone. The motion carries. All right, on to item F this evening, the Minnesota Marketing Partnership.
Thank you, Mr. President. The Minnesota Marketing Partnership is something put together by the state of Minnesota and their Department of Employment and Economic Development. It's a group that gets together. It includes both cities, counties, the state itself, regional economic development authorities or organizations, as well as partners like Greater MSP and the utility companies, Xcel Energy, Dakota Electric, Great River Energy, others. Essentially with the goal of how best to promote the state of Minnesota and all that we have to offer to businesses and residents alike looking to potentially relocate or find a new place to call home. The annual cost is $700. Staff is proposing that HEDRA authorize staff for that expenditure from its marketing dollars. Something to try for a year, see if we get good value out of it. Really the goal behind it is to provide staff additional base time with state and county leaders that are out meeting with site selectors to bring more awareness of the city of Hastings and the opportunities we have here, namely our 55 acre shovel-ready development site in the industrial park. $700 we think is a fair cost in terms of the number of meetings you get, and then in fact the governor was just in Finland. These people get this kind of exposure, right? And so to try it, give it a go, and that's what we're asking for HEDRA this evening. If you have any questions, happy to answer them.
All right, thank you, Eric. Does anyone have any questions revolving this expenditure? All right, if not, I will entertain a motion. All right, do we have a second? All right, all those in favor of approving Resolution 2021 the next one. Careful. There we go. The marketing expenditure for 2022, yes, for the Minnesota Marketing Partnership. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. All right, very good, thank you. Okay, on to items, or reports and information for tonight. Development updates. We have quite a list here.
Mr. President, there's a lot of stuff going on right now, which is great. I'm not going to go through all the list here, but I'll highlight a few important details. A couple of great things coming up this week and next week. We are now the proud owner of a former liquor store at Rivertown Liquors, and I want to thank Eric for all his work and diligence in that property, as well as the future closing next week for the Old Country Nights building. These are two buildings that have been vacant, derelict, and an eyesore for a number of years. And I'm so pleased that we have the commitment here to follow through and to make something better on that site. There's a lot of work ahead of us, more properties to acquire, but these are great steps, and kudos to Eric for all his hard work on that. Other things going on around town, Squeaky Wheel Pottery, 209 Sibley Street, is going to be opening up soon, so that'll be another place coming into the downtown. When you look at downtown right now, I don't not recall really any vacancies. I mean, there's some areas that are underutilized, but really no leasable space ready. And that's something we haven't seen for quite a long time here. That's a census to the strength of what's happening, and when you have all the new residences coming in the future, how that will change things. Our 213 Ramsey Street property, that is a property we jointly own with the school district that they're looking to get out of their lease. We're examining options for that property as far as what we might be able to do in the interim and how that might work in the long term. So there'll be more to that to come. On the new development front, we had a meeting at council to set the stage for annexation for another 159 single-family homes in the south end of the city on Highway 316 and Michael Avenue. So that'll be going through for consideration of the annexation, which is essentially adding to the city. And then the development plans for the spring will be coming in as well. They'll be breaking ground very shortly into the spring. We had a neighborhood meeting this week for for the flats on 3rd Street. That is the Nate Stencil project. We were curious as to what the neighborhood reaction would be, and in particular those that would be immediately adjacent to it. We did have a couple of people that showed up from the neighborhood in there. Only one person that was directly adjacent to it, probably 3 or 4 other residents that were in the neighborhood there. And so Mr. Stencil is looking at the plans that he has right now and looking to see what tweaks might be made. There is, we had a preliminary review of that with him with our internal development review committee, so he's reacting to some of those comments. Bottom line is, the action on that one's probably going to be more in January than in December. So he's looking at that one, still very interested in the site, but looking to make some potential changes. As far as clearing the site itself, if you're into online auctions and old buildings, we have one for sale. 10,000 right now. I think the bid's up to $11,000 for the building. The auction lasts till the end of Monday. We've had a tremendous amount of interest from folks, and I want to thank our building official, Travis Dunn, who's spent a number of hours touring that facility with potential bidders. So we're very hopeful that does well. We've got a pool going too, so to see what happens in that internally. And Travis has put in one of the highest bids on that one so far, so I'm very happy. Hopefully he comes through on it. So we'll get that one off the site and have that one set for development. But yeah, just a lot of great things going in around town. There's things that are not within this list that I hope to be able to share with you in the future about other residential developments that people have been kicking the tires on, other commercial developments, industrial developments. So the interest beyond what we see on this list is still very strong. So I can stand for any questions.
Thank you, John. Any questions about this robust list?
On the Tyler Street, that grant that they received, I'm assuming we would use that for other projects as well going forward. Or do you?
Oh, you're talking about the school district site?
No, the
Oh.
250,000 redevelopment
Oh,
incentive
yes.
grant. Yeah, that wasn't part of the project when we first started talking about it, and I'm
Right.
wondering where that came in and how we got that, so.
Yeah. Eric was able to put that together with our former intern Grady on that as well, and able to secure that, so that would be for some of the site development of that. The one thing that's great about the redevelopment incentive grant program from Dakota County is basically we have an annual opportunity for redevelopment funding. And over the 10, 15 years that's been available, we're number 2 in the county as far as funds that have received. I mean, the only person ahead of us is Burnsville, and they're not very far. We've had, with this one, probably close to $2.5 million that we've been able to bring into Hastings for various projects.
Commissioner Golish, an update on that one. City Council did authorize the grant agreement at their meeting earlier this week, and so that went over to the county for final authorization by Tony Shirtler, their executive director. So that agreement's in place, and we look forward to seeing the funds.
All right, does that complete our updates then?
No, it doesn't. We have one more update of great importance here, and a little bit of trepidation as well. Our long-term HEDRA president has termed out here, unfortunately. And I've had the opportunity to work with Dennis during most of the 20 years that I've been here. He spent 12 years on this board, 6 years on Planning Commission. He's been a tireless advocate for this city. His ability to sketch ideas, his mind's always a whir on how we can make things better. When you take a look at the downtown riverfront renaissance, one of the very first things that happened down there, I think, was something that Dennis helped sketch out. Was, okay, how do we use this land better? This is before we had any consultants available. It was just something Dennis did because he wanted to make the community a better place, and that's a great representation of the type of individual that he is. We've been blessed to have his service here through all these years, and I would imagine that his end of service on HEDRA is not going to be the end of his commitment to making Hastings a better place. So I wanted to extend my heartfelt thanks in having someone of his caliber to be able to guide me and be able to provide context on a lot of these great projects. And along with that, I got a couple of things. Eric and I were trying to figure out, what the heck do you get Dennis? It's a tough thing because we had, we got plaques, we got walls. Dennis is an architect, okay? So with Eric's help, I have 2 things here. Planning Commission, HEDRA. This is a couple of series of books for the love of cities, Peter Kageyama. I don't know if you have these, but this is something I believe is right in your wheelhouse. So, Mr. President, thank you so much for everything.
This will be good. By far, this has been the most nervous I've ever been in a meeting, which is strange because it should be just the opposite. But the only thing that I need to do here tonight is thank people. John, I would like to thank you greatly. I think that we both learned an amazing amount and clearly accomplished a lot just by what we're looking at here tonight. So it's been an absolute pleasure to work alongside you, and Justin and Eric has been an amazing addition to the city staff. Rusty, his short time here, nothing would be possible without any of you. I'm thrilled with the experience we have on city staff, and I'm just optimistic as hell. Sorry, I'm getting to say that. We have a dynamic duo here, and you're all amazing fools if you don't rely on them. They're brilliant, they're seasoned, they're excited, and they're ready. Yeah, good luck to everyone here. I'd like to thank the mayors, past and present, for their conversations and guidance over the years. The numerous HEDRA members that are both sitting here tonight and sat here for long before I did. the most important thing about this body has been diversity. Diversity in experience, the breadth of that experience, the depth of that experience. Commissioner Groblish, you saved us tonight, and I think that everybody does that at some point. Everybody has brought something different to HEDRA. I would encourage you in the future to always maintain that degree of diversity with this group especially, because this is the group that kind of makes the hard decisions that people don't always hear about right away, but find out about later. These are the people that really need to know what they're talking about, not just think they know what they're talking about. I would encourage you to seek that out and not accept anything less in the future. I want to thank my family, my partner Dan, who's been with me for 13 years and has been very understanding of no Thursday nights. But the community. The reason I'm here is that my family from more sides than I'd care to admit are from this area in Dakota County in general. And I am so happy that I have nieces and nephews that are making homes here with now my first grade niece. If this is a good place to be, we're doing something right. I just want to see that continue. So good luck to everyone in this room. Thank you.
So just as a clarification here in our order of business, that concludes the regular portion of our meeting. We do have a closed-door session scheduled here to review potential opportunities and pricing for purchase of properties on Block 28. So at this time, if HEDRA is inclined to do so, a motion to close the regular meeting, and then we would open up the closed-door session at that point. As far as other business for HEDRA, once we conclude the closed-door session, that is the end of business for tonight. There will not be any other public business going on. So at this point, I can entertain a motion from the commission.
Yes, we have a motion. Do I have a second? Second. Thank you, commissioners. All those in favor of closing this portion of our meeting this evening, please signify by saying aye. Aye. All those opposed? The motion carries. We are momentarily